It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.
Let's do this thing.
Everything in that picture brings you joy.
Welcome, gentlemen, to another podcast. Today we've got Peter Lawrence.
Hi there.
And joining us again, the mighty Jason Scherschligt. It's just a bunch of consonants. No one should try to pronounce it. Jason is our head of product and the editor-in-chief of a newsletter called The Pollinator, which is a curated, I don't even know how to describe it. I just like it because you reference all these articles and kind of explain what's in them. And
I think of it as a digest of good product thinking from across the internet, with a little bit of my own perspective and SDG's product perspective on those concepts and resources.
So today we're going to talk about product for companies that don't. Is that a good way of saying it?
Yeah, I guess I would describe it more as digital product management models, methods, practices for companies that may have started life outside of providing digital products. In many cases, that might be because they started before the rise of the commercial internet, and perhaps even before the rise of the use of personal computers as business machines. If you're a manufacturer that's been around 100 years, certainly you've got technologists on your staff, if you're of any size at all, but you maybe started life before you had what you would manage as digital products. Or maybe you're a newer company, but you started in, physical goods or making something, and then you're wanting to start adopting digital product models and methods, or at least considering them and wanting to evaluate the value of that.
I think my description was much better. Way more informative.
You say digital products because sort of physical products people have a concept about, but digital products are still sort of where the market's figuring things out.
Yeah, and I'm defining product pretty broadly there. It might not necessarily be the thing you sell. If you're a maker of, like I said, a manufacturer of some physical good, you make lawnmowers, you aren't necessarily going to start making, mobile app lawnmowers, because that won't have the, physical capabilities to cut your grass. But right. You might be able to better serve your customers who want to get the right lawnmower for their particular lawn, and maybe need to do some customization and configuration. Perhaps there's a community of other lawn enthusiasts that you'd want to start, joining up with. That all can be provided through digital means, through software, web experiences, mobile app experiences, anything that I primarily consume through a screen, a monitor, and interact with through electrons versus the physical atoms of the lawnmower itself. All of that, I say, can be managed as digital products. And by doing so, the lawnmower company in this case, or whatever, financial services company, anything that doesn't primarily sell software, they can provide their value proposition or enhance their value proposition through these digital products.
It's even something as simple as quote form for a construction company, which I did. Speaking from my own experience, something that simple is a digital product, and it's tying those services to the people looking for those services through that kind of interface. And
yeah, that's right.
I know, Peter, I'm sure you've worked on a number of software development projects creating digital products and software for different companies. Sure. Yeah, and even internally, I have products I support for different teams or the company. Our high five form is a product.
Yeah. You might even say, guys, that this podcast for SDG is a product in that it's responding to the needs of a market the user base, the listeners who are listening to this. It's got some business goals for SDG. Certainly, we like to just spread good information and have conversations and build a community. Also to help, market our capabilities, etc. Presumably, there are some metrics you guys are tracking about listeners and engagement and sharing and such. And all of it is, intended to help increase the value of what our company, Solution Design Group, does for our customer base.
Now that is mind blowing, right? The whole product with product discussion within the product. That's
you
awesome.
go. Yep.
Okay, so we've gone meta where the snake is eating its own tail.
Just a single plane. Yes.
Yeah, I look at the podcast as giving people a sense of SDG and its people and kind of what we do and how we think about things. No matter what we're talking about, that core of kind of who we are comes through the message. And I see that with the pollinator as I read the different newsletters religiously. And I do.
There are many, yes.
I get really good nuggets, and some of it's brain candy for me. Like, I'm not going to take it and run with it and do amazing things, but a lot of it's planting seeds and shifting the way I think about things and going, okay, I have customers, I'm developing software, we're supporting it, it's on a platform, it's a cloud service provider that we have to work with, and there's constraints and business goals behind it.
And there's maybe an evolutionary path to it too. You start out in maybe one format or set of topics, and then start thinking, how can we expand it? Maybe additional platforms. When the SDG podcast starts creating user groups and conferences and things that I'm sure you've got on your roadmap. But there is sort of a, how might we continue to deliver our value proposition to the market? And again, that's my point about product models and methods for the non-digital product company.
One of the things I see is it really makes you think through like every piece of it.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a common problem that I've been a part of, going in and doing a body of work, doing a project, and a project has a start and an end date, but the result of the project doesn't. And then you walk away. But without that product thinking, it's like, are we aligning business goals with what we're doing? Are we aligning customers' goals, or who are our customers? What problem are we solving?
Mm-hmm.
All of those ideas. And sometimes it's easy just to be the guy that goes in and whips up a solution, cuts a lot of corners because, limited time, limited budget, limited resources, things like that can happen.
Yeah.
But if
you're operating under constraints there, you may think, well, I can meet this requirement, which I always think is kind of a hilarious term really in products, this thing without which it cannot exist. But really what you're trying to do is respond to the needs of a market in a way that's going to then cause that market to return value, or that group of users, if it's an internal product maybe, that's going to cause them to return value to you by renewing with your product or paying for it, or any of the kind of core business metrics that are important to you. So a product gets built by considering, as you mentioned, all these different factors. There's sort of the business factors. What is the value we want to put into the world? There's the technical factors. What's the way we're going to accomplish this? How is this feasible? There are important usability, desirability types of factors, which are related to the design of the product and making sure you're identifying the problem well, and responding to the needs to what that problem is through the solution you develop. So yeah, I think you're right that product management, it can actually get so big as to be almost comical. We had a little discussion on the SDG product Slack channel just the other day. I had seen a diagram, and you'll see these all the time, of kind of a skills matrix of product managers. And one of our colleagues commented that it looked like this was looking for a hero product manager, and how do we actually focus that into maybe a few kind of key skills of communication, stakeholder alignment, building and empowering a good product team so that the rest of the team can be successful, so the product manager doesn't need to take it all on him or herself.
When you talk about product, and project. The big difference for me is determining success, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And with what Kyle is talking about, you come in there, you've got the constraints, you produce the software, you leave, your project is a success, right?
Yep.
You've produced exactly what they asked for, but your product might not be a success because it might have done the exact requirements, but not done anything that somebody needed, right?
Yeah. That warms my heart to hear you say that, Peter, because it just indicates that our, great technologists at SDG like you are really grasping some of the key principles of a product mindset and a good product approach. I often say, and again, I don't want to diminish the value of good project management and a well-run project, but often that exists within a product. It's a component of a broader product. And I often say in just one sentence, you manage a project to end and you manage a product to endure or to last. So the point of a project is to get it to done, whereas the point of a product is to get it to last. Like, what's the next thing we need and how do we keep building a successful business and satisfying our customers out of that product? And that little shift, I think, really describes the difference pretty well between good project management and good product management.
And it is a shift, and it's a complete mind shift, because for so long, I mean, even going from waterfall into agile is kind of that same mentality shift, right? Like agile sort of came about because they were trying to reduce and solve the right problems.
Yeah.
And identify the right problems, which is an attempt to get to that outcome, right? You're looking for the right problem.
Yeah, I think of that very simple, one of the agile principles of responding to change versus following a plan. Again, a successful project might be, look at what we did exactly map to our Gantt chart and our project plan. And isn't that great? We followed the plan perfectly. But again, as you mentioned, that doesn't tell me that we actually learned something more about our market along the way or our user base along the way, and we were able to respond and adapt to it. Another little kind of half joke I make is that in a product mindset, we're celebrating when our requirements have changed because it means we've learned more about who our customers are or who our users are. And that's a good thing. Let's respond to it.
So how do we do that? How do I as a company I want to do
Yeah.
I've heard the word, I want to do product. Make me do product. Where do I start?
Yeah. So I'd say I've got actually a little acronym, and I may not have ever mentioned this to you guys, called Push Me, which is my own little, conception. But P and U, that means we start in the problem space where the users are. So before we jump to here's what we need to make, we spend time understanding our users in their context and really defining what the problems are that we might be able to uniquely solve for them. Then when we do move to solutions, we frame those as hypotheses. So now PUSH, problems as experienced by users, explore your solutions as hypotheses, which encourages us to take an experimental mindset, to maybe be a little bit skeptical of certainty, not fall in love with the first thing we ideated, but instead test it, learn from it, scrap the parts that didn't work, accelerate the parts that did work, and again, use that kind of experimental mindset. Then the me portion, as we're doing that, we're measuring along the way, collecting good metrics that are meaningful to the product, and then ultimately that ladder up that are meaningful to the business. And the last letter, E, is for empowering a team. And that may sound a little bit squishy, but what I really mean is that the team then becomes the vehicle through which value is delivered versus, say, a project being the thing. And that actually has some big implications when we're talking about non-software product companies attempting to become good software product deliverers, is that instead of funding projects, you might fund, literally, this is where our investment goes, our annual planning goes to a team who is charged to pursue an outcome by identifying the particular problems in the user base and hypothesizing on solutions and experimenting until they get it right. So push me, problems as experienced by users, solutions framed as hypotheses, measure along the way, and empower a team to do it.
You use the word certainty. Your May pollinator newsletter used the phrase resist false certainty, which really stood out to me as a golden nugget, because we do buy into things and we do get ideas and we feel like this is the thing. I found it. And based on that,
it's comfortable too, and it starts to get to some of broader mindsets beyond just the product team, but even a whole organization. Oftentimes a senior leader who might be making some funding decisions might be saying the thing we need to do is build this portal on this platform that does this particular thing, and that's what I'm going to fund. And then the product team is kind of off the hook from questioning the strategy of that decision. Now, the senior leader, I suspect, is someone who is smart and capable and experienced and cares about the business, and might instead say, boy, a better model would be, I know we have this particular problem. There's a market that we're not satisfying, or our competitors are doing something better than we are. We think there's this thing we could exploit that we haven't. Let's fund a team to figure out how we might do that. And that requires a different kind of empowerment and trust, communication back from the team upward, willingness to accept some failures, but to make them quickly and therefore cheaply, as we get smarter about what it is we should do. And all of that is in this realm of resisting that false certainty. There's another quote that what you mentioned reminds me of, Kyle. Jeff Bezos has said, be stubborn on vision and flexible on details. So maybe you'll have some, and I might be not getting that quote exactly right, but when we talk about certainty, maybe you're certain about the mission you want to accomplish or your vision for what you want your business or your product to be. But the details, that's where we need to let go of some certainty, because new information is going to come in all the time.
And you make a great point when you talk about sort of that driven leader who's used to calling a shot, maybe, or calling the plan, or picking, choosing amongst the 3 or 4 solutions that somebody's presented them, and choosing that solution, right? And that's the way we're going. I've turned the ship and let's go. In the product mindset, you kind of have to choose the direction, or listen to the wind a little bit more when you're choosing your direction, and empower your people to follow that a little bit more.
Yeah. And you might want to make kind of an important strategic decision about the types of markets you want to pursue. Maybe the level that you want to be at. Are we going to be sort of a luxury offering or the bare bones offering? But exactly what it is that your product, or maybe even your intervention against a problem, might be, is where, in the case you described, if we're choosing between 4 options, I would want to say, how can we learn more about those 4 options relatively quickly, but in a way that will teach us which one is the right one to pursue? Again, I'm sorry to keep using just kind of random examples, but I think I've read about, even when the iPhone was developed, they actually had a few competing teams looking at totally different interfaces and ways of working and technology platforms, spending some time exploring what were essentially competing options in order to learn more about where the smart investment might be. So again, in your case, Peter, of these 4 competing priorities, let's explore them each a little bit. Maybe we'll learn that one is worthless. Another one's got some high upside, but is a little bit experimental. And maybe we put a different kind of team on that. And another one has got some kind of immediate benefits that we should accelerate some investment in. But rather than just immediately saying we have to pick one.
Well, it should all flow out of objective or goal for the organization. that high level vision, should be articulated, objectives, goals. Kind of starting at that point is where you get the organizational buy-in, you get the executive leadership buy-in. Like, okay, coming from this, these are the problems that these goals and objectives seek to solve. How do we start then? Where do we go from here?
Yeah. Well, one thing that the system that you're describing just begs for is some sort of a metrics framework. So what we want to be is the biggest seller of lawnmowers in this market or whatever. I'm sorry, I keep using this random lawnmower example. And maybe for a particular type of user, it's going to be for the commercials, the park and rec departments or something, because we want to be the best mower of parks. And then we start laddering that back into things that might be measurable, like what percentage of the parks are we covering, and is there a reason that we're doing that? And then we can start getting back into product metrics, maybe the size of the deck and the speed of the mower and the understanding that we're being operated by professionals. And this is not a great analogy anymore, but that might be something, but I'm going to just keep using it. That might be something that we want to continue to exploit as an advantage and measure. And then maybe we find, again, to continue there's some digitization of the lawnmower market. Maybe there's some, digital capabilities that allow someone to manage a fleet of lawnmowers. If I'm the park and recs department maintenance person, and there's great, digital communications between my fleet of lawnmowers, because unlike the solo homeowner, this is a group that owns a bunch of these things, and they're making kind of maintenance decisions and scheduling decisions. And this one's got to go in for an oil change, so let's deploy this other one to that sector of the park. I'm totally riffing on making up this example. But my point is I keep using this gesture, meaning there's kind of a ladder or a framework that goes back all the way to the individual feature decision being made, at the sprint by sprint level, that ideally starts to say, we're going to do this because we believe this will increase our ability to provide greater coverage for the park and rec department lawnmower fleet operator.
And we're going to measure it to know if we are actually doing it.
And
right?
when we learn that this thing that we thought might do it doesn't seem to have the desired effect, but this other one does, we'll spend a little more time exploring that one and adapt the first one and things like that. And that's why measurement is so important.
And I think it's great that it's part of Push Me, because it's something that is a product mindset, but not a project mindset.
Yeah. And a project mindset, a lot of the things we measure tend to be things like story points delivered, number of features, included, number of requirements met, utilization rates of our developers and things, all these things that, again, are helpful for understanding sort of the operation of the project, I suppose, but don't teach us much about what we're doing for our customers, our users, our business.
For sure.
And for the organization, the game changes when you shift from parks to golf courses.
Sure. Yeah.
And mowing a green is a whole different ball game than just mowing.
So that might be a different niche that someone wants to go after. And there's all sorts of interesting things that need to happen on the golf course that's getting mowed, for example.
Or you have, maybe a promotional marketing initiative where the Barker family that lives down the street from my folks, the guy works for Toro and does tractor pulls and turns lawnmowers into these amazing machines that are extremely loud.
Yeah.
So they're really cool.
Yeah, lawnmowers. Nice. Yeah. I don't know why I use this
talking
example,
lawnmowers.
I'm looking outside at the grass today, thinking with all this rain, I'm going to have to mow this weekend.
A lot of us are thinking about lawnmowers right now, that's for sure.
I like to see the correlation.
Kyle, he's got a chore cult that takes care of his lawn for him.
Yeah, I do.
Eventually.
I detest physical labor of any form. So going from zero to product, well, not zero, but organizational goals, business problems, things like that, maybe projects that have been done, moving from that to product. That's the goal. I mean, that's kind of what your mission.
Yeah, although I would say, and I hope this isn't blasphemous as SDG's head of product, the goal isn't to become product managed. The goal is to become, or kind of effectively product led. The goal is to deliver increased value to my customer, and build a business and satisfy a market, and also do it in a way that's sustainable. And we've got a long-term vision, and that's ethical, and that, makes it a good place to work, and that satisfies our mission, and all this kind of virtuous stuff as well. So I am certainly an advocate for a product model, but really that's a shorthand for a good way of working to deliver value. So I care less about someone saying we're product managed, and we have product managers now, and we call ourselves products instead of projects. I care more about, are you continuously delivering value for your users in a way that causes them to want to stick around and renew and evangelize your services and pay for things and help you build your business.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of goes to the whole Scrum Master. Just because you have someone called the Scrum Master doesn't mean you're an agile organization.
Yeah. I think it's sometimes helpful to think with agile, just think of it as a lowercase adjective instead of this uppercase methodology.
Right.
Like, are you operating with agility? Are you flexible? Are you responding to change? Are you listening to your market? Are you delivering iteratively? Are you learning from those small increments of delivery and then adapting along the way? And that's just something we describe with an adjective called agile, which might also be called, nimble and responsive, or and value driven, and some of those kind of things.
You might, it's doing it. It's the work of doing it, whatever you call it. And if you can't just stick a label on it, but the results, it's kind of the goal of software development and building solutions for an organization. It's the underlying goals and kind of mission, without putting a name on it, without putting roles on it. The need is all there. It's all laid out. Do product, whatever you call it.
Yeah, I liked your use of the word mission there. I'm a sucker for a good mission. Throughout my career, I've worked for organizations that have missions that I believe in, and I probably wouldn't last very long at an organization whose mission I didn't care much about.
Right.
But I think a product as a way an organization, a company or a nonprofit or a university or whatever, that's a way you put your mission into your market. It's sort of the vehicle for what your mission is really your product. And again, that's kind of a broad definition of product.
So seeing that in action, you've been involved, I'm sure, in tons of projects. When you're kind of finished with your part of it and you see it play out, kind of what sense of satisfaction do you get? Do you get to see it, or are you off to the next thing?
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, I hope I'm not being blasphemous as SDG's head of product. Product becomes something that I think a company really needs to own on its own. It's not something you can totally outsource. So even though we're consultants that aren't actually at all our customers, whether they're ag tech or financial services or manufacturing or education or whatever business they happen to be in, I encourage them to build up great product management and product practices themselves, because that will last. Whereas a consultant by nature, we're temporary. We're a little bit mercenaries. But I get satisfaction from having seen good product practices take root at organizations. So not just seeing the thing get done, but seeing the people kind of be able to sustain it for the long term. So when I talk about the product that endures, where there's some confidence that they've now got the people, the systems, the processes, the mindset that mean it's going to last. I've had several occasions with SDG consulting engagements where the people I've worked with have referred to me personally, even in some of the stuff we do at SDG, as being like their guide, their Sherpa. One gentleman said I was his product rabbi, a product therapist, like someone that they talk to when they need kind of counsel and advice in order for them to really take ownership of some concepts and methods, et cetera. And that personally brings me a fair amount of professional and personal satisfaction. I do like to see good things made too and put into the world. I mean, who doesn't like when a clunky spreadsheet based solution and that was kind of stitched together with a few things, and we say, you actually have a product here and you're just kind of fulfilling it in this rudimentary way. Let's see that advance. And then it's really satisfying when the end users start to be delighted by it and say, this is a game changer for me too. And then, the whole virtuous circle happens.
That's really for your internal customers. That's the best return on investment you can have, right? Is have that feedback of
yep.
Of a happy
I made a
customer.
thing and it did something good for me. I'll not to be a pessimist, but I also always think the reverse is very valuable for software developers. That's why I insist on, we got to get to know our users and we got to spend time with them. And when I say that, I don't just mean the market researcher or the user experience designer. I love when a software development team gets exposed to the right. software being used and gets to observe it, in the wild. Engineers are problem solvers almost by definition. And if they can see, oh, you know what? These people are struggling with this thing I made for them. And don't they realize you just got to check this box and click this button and flip this toggle, and then it'll work the way you want. And then you realize I maybe designed something that wasn't as, usable as I thought it might be. And learning that, seeing it kind of forces you to feel that pain. And those engineers will come up with a great solution then.
Absolutely. There's nothing more frustrating than watching a user use your software. During testing or something like that. And like even on a screen share or something, and you just watch what they're doing and you're like, oh,
you just want to tell them, don't you just see this is what I meant?
Right. You just need to use the shortcut keys that everybody has memorized for Windows, of course.
Yeah. This actually brings up an interesting related point, kind of related to that E and Push Me, the empowered team. I think it's really valuable for the whole team to engage in activities like understanding the users and observing the users, working together, that your teammates are not just the other engineers. It's that whole product team that's trying to solve these user problems. And this actually gets back to some of the kind of organizational, cultural mindset shifts, behavioral shifts.
Right.
Things like giving time for software developers to sit in on a usability test, which, some spreadsheet keepers and bean counters might think, well, that means our software coders aren't coding. But in fact, a big part of the work of coding is observing, learning, thinking about, responding to. So my hypothesis would be the more effective team, and in fact, the probably more cost-effective team, will be one where the engineers are spending time doing things that don't exactly look like software development.
For sure.
I heard
and they have to have their mouths taped shut during that process.
I heard at quote, I don't know who said this, I think it's been said many times, is every company now is a software company.
Yeah. Yep.
Which means that this kind of business problem of not doing what product seeks to do cuts across like every company.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, the way I think of that quote is Mark Andreessen's software is eating the world, which is a little bit more of a kind of fun metaphor, but every company is being consumed by becoming a software business. So I'm going to stop using my lawnmower metaphor. But any company, whether you're a bank, whether you're an airline, whether you're a university, a manufacturer, a publisher, a news organization, you may have at one point printed newspapers and hired 14-year-old kids to go around and throw them on doorsteps. And that's how you distributed the news. Now what you are is using digital mechanisms, and which includes communities and favorites and preferences and all sorts of kind of algorithmic decision making about what should be consumed by whom. That's all software. Again, every business, financial services, manufacturing, et cetera, has this kind of at heart software core. So getting good at being a software product company, even if the thing the customer actually is paying for is the physical lawnmower, becomes not just a competitive differentiator, but almost like a table stakes. Like, right. I mean, imagine if you had a bank that said, we're a really good bank, we make good investments, we protect your money, but no, we don't have an app that allows you to check your balance. You'd never go there. It's just sort of an expectation.
We keep our books in pen and on paper.
Right.
And we do it really well.
Right. Yep.
We use adding machines now, but
you'd have a market. You'd have kind of I don't like the term Luddite, but you'd have a market of people that
you might,
don't want you connected,
but don't want any internet connection. You might.
I don't know how you reach them.
And that maybe is your differentiation, but it's going to be a smaller market.
And then location becomes everything because they can't go online. They got to drive to your branch.
Right.
Yeah. Just an aside, if you're going to get me to cover your paper out, you better tell me I have to put the paper together from like 6 different piles before I do it. Otherwise, I'm just going to leave it and go home because it's 4:30 in the morning. I'm not saying that happened, but
gotcha.
Yeah.
Sounds like somebody's Sunday morning delivery didn't get there quite on time.
A long time ago. All right. So you're a company, you want to build solutions, you've got existing solutions, you want to take on the product mission. I guess what's the next step for that?
Yeah. It can be a little bit daunting, especially if you are kind of a big legacy company that's been around a while. Certainly you've got, high quality technologists and teams and funding mechanisms and such, but it's probably, or it might be organized according to the project mindset that we described earlier. And what I might advise is don't get overwhelmed by the size of the, mission ahead of you. Maybe start small with a small segment of your user experience. And instead of saying we're going to do this kind of top-down, requirements-driven, estimates-driven, funded by our annual operating plan to execute a set of requirements, maybe take on one segment that seems like a good candidate, fund a team, a product team, to explore the problem together, to identify some potential solutions, to experiment on what those solutions might, whether they're working or not, whether they're feasible, usable, valuable, viable, some of the kind of classic Marty Kaganisms of product thinking, but fund a team to explore that. And then that team will learn how we work best together, and they can maybe start bringing back to a broader organization best practices, things they've learned about their market, things, maybe some unique dynamics within the company. So I would say you don't have to start with a overhaul of your entire apparatus.
So not all or nothing.
Find a pocket.
I see kind of a user research component in there as kind of
early, that's so great. Yep.
Early move.
Yeah, that's so great. Yeah. I think that is a kind of material difference between a product organization and a project organization, or a kind of a traditional organization, is the weight that user research, prototyping and design up early, early in front of things, has in that kind of effective product organization. That might be a new investment you need to make. I think we've even seen that at SDG, where there are software developers and associated roles like project managers and business analysts and QA and DevOps and a variety of these kind of deployment and development roles, but design as integrated with that team might be something that a lot of companies are a little short on.
Yeah, and it's a surprise, and it's a surprise when you have it and how much it helps.
Yeah.
Relative to, it's not just picking out the color of a button. It's more like we said earlier, where the software developer watches the end user use their product for the first time, having never met, spoken, or anything, and having them try to get through it and finding all the pathways that they never considered or anything like that because they didn't do the research.
Yeah. Yeah,
see
you're exactly right about it not being the color of a button. I think of it as design is not about decoration. Design is about problem solving.
Right.
In a way that is efficient and effective, and in some cases even delightful. But
for sure,
that's what
never
the
hurts.
purpose is.
It never hurts to know your people better. I mean, that user research piece
Yeah.
is going to benefit you in many other ways
Yep.
as well.
And
identifying your business problems.
Yep. I've joked before. July of the year 2000 that I got my first job as a product manager. So that's 24 years ago. And in those 24 years, I've never had a conversation with a customer or a user that I thought was a waste of time.
Right.
I always learn something.
Then we haven't talked enough.
Kyle pushing the wrong buttons. So let's say I'm at an organization and I'm on a team and I'm not the CIO and I'm not the product owner, project manager, whatever role they want to talk about. Can I start doing product?
Yeah, what a great question. So I think you can, and maybe I'm not advocating for insubordination by
neither am
team members.
I'm not either.
But I do think there is some healthy asking why. What is the purpose of this thing that we declared to be a requirement? And the requirement is usually not, we want to have this particular piece of software functionality. What it is intended to be, we want to solve a particular problem for a user, or give them an opportunity to do something in a new way. And if you can just start asking why about a few of the things that might have come to you as project requirements, you might start discovering that you actually have, I like the empowered team because I also think there's a lot of great ideas that come from designers and engineers and product folks a little bit deeper in the organization. So you might actually come up with a better answer to why we're doing that than what was originally on this requirement. And I would even say that the person who prioritized and funded that project didn't actually care about the specifics of it that were, encoded in these initial estimates and requirements. What they cared about is the outcome. And if you can find a better way to deliver that outcome, one, you're demonstrating great product thinking and responsiveness, and I would say agility. And two, you're actually doing what they really wanted. So do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And be communicative. And I'm not saying lie, but you might say, I see what the next thing we were supposed to work on is building this, this new page where we track orders. But did you actually realize that we've got this kind of dashboard functionality that I think is going to be more useful to our customers that will mean we don't even need to create that new page, but instead we can add some new data to this dashboard. I'm making up an example again.
Right.
And that will actually solve the problem in a better way. And I think will delight the users. Communicate that, talk through it, and go ahead with something like that.
Yeah, I don't think it's hard to sell like an early win. Of your mission. Especially when you're trying to get people on board with the idea. Like for me, going into an organization that is making a brand new intranet on SharePoint, and they're thinking of what that front page is going to look like, all the bits and pieces, and like that whole mission. And I'm thinking, how about a search page that lets you search all your file shares? Like we can start there and roll that out, give them a specific thing they can begin utilizing immediately and benefiting from, and also do this other thing that will be a part of. So I think, the incorporates user research and maybe help solve those problems, help solve the why.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay to push back a little bit. I don't think it's really even pushing back. I think it's
clarification. Yeah.
Here's an idea. Kyle, you've mentioned in the past that you've had projects with SharePoint where you've gone and talked to the people that are going to be using SharePoint or maintaining it, talking to them directly, kind of doing baby step of user research and getting a better product for it, right?
I was mostly on solo projects where I was playing all the roles and expected to deliver. We're hiring you to do this. Like I was coming in to mow the lawn and do some trimming, and they would be happy when they saw the grass was short. But that requires, we got to get away from this lawnmower stuff. It's just,
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
But no, you're going in and listening. You talk about mission. One of my favorite things to do was learn what their mission was and take it on myself. Like I'm joining your mission. I'm not coming in with my mission. I'm finding out what your mission is. And, I did a huge workflow that was kind of time boxed and was kind of forced by some legislation. And, that was, when I walked in, we changed the architecture as a first step. And, I came in late to the party, but it was, it wasn't delivered in this is all wrong. This all sucks. This is horrible. It's like, I've talked to some people, I've talked to the users, I've looked at what the outcome needs to be and what we're working with, and we really would benefit by shifting gears at this point. We're early on enough to make this change. That's kind of that thought leadership. It's kind of, you could see it as questioning, but I think, that product thinking and that long-term vision and that user advocacy and understanding and carrying all that forward, that's a great mission. And if you help them accomplish their goals, that's awesome. Yep. And if you go back a year later and you see that they've made a ton of changes to it, you might feel like defensive about that, but that's really kind of a good thing. Like they've shifted gears, they've learned things along the way, they're in there using it, they're doing things with it.
It's enduring, right?
I heard that they changed the name of an intranet site that I built at one of my customers. And I was like, man, but it's like, why do I care? Why do I think that's a bad thing? Why do I care?
But you had the coolest name for it, right?
I did. Yeah.
For you.
Yeah, I think you just
thing I like.
The three of us have all been around technology and business and products long enough to realize there's certain things you can't fall in love with, because you'll just break your own heart. So you got to learn to let go of some of those kind of things.
Yeah. The joy comes in delivering something that they like. And sometimes you don't find that out for a while, but delivering something that brings great value, that's seeing that the organization is still highly invested in it. And at its core, it's what you developed and worked on. And then seeing that over time been updated to match the way the organization has changed and the goals have changed.
Yeah.
And that's really cool to see. But you don't get to see it a lot because you're not always like in front of the right people that were involved. You're on to the next thing.
Right. Not there long enough to see it happen.
Well, and in our industry, even the thing that was state of the art today won't be a year from now. And those expectations we don't get to set ourselves. They're set all the time by big technology companies and every other system that our users are interacting with. So the thing that, we thought was state of the art, suddenly there's a new device, a new technology, a new interaction. Amazon suddenly, devises a better way to do a shopping cart experience. And then our rudimentary shopping cart is no longer delighting the customer. It might even be disappointing them. Yep.
I mean, same thing with the iPhone, right? Nobody predicted the iPhone, and then it was there. And so everything changed.
Yeah. Yeah, you're always kind of going up a down escalator. So standing still means you'll find yourself back at the beginning.
I don't know if I could run up an escalator anymore. We got a few minutes left. Any parting thoughts? Jason, is there any specific things that people could go look at? I know you've got a ton of information in the pollinator.
So I'd say the pollinator for sure. We have had some. I've been trying to increasingly cover or include stories about traditional product companies that need to become, traditional, manufacturers, et cetera, that can start adopting these digital product models. Actually, just in the most recent issue, there was an article that I included that talked about, or that I referred to, that talked about pure digital companies and traditional product companies. I think that was a good example. There was a great story, and I won't go into the details. You could find it several issues ago. There was an article or a blog post from a UX leader named Jeff Gotthelf, and he had written about Fender guitars and their digital product practice. I thought he had a great blog post about that. Again, I mentioned it in the Pollinator, and about how Fender guitars, which obviously make some kind of iconic physical artifacts, guitars, amplifiers, etc., had created these digital communities called Fender Play, which was education and community, and it was all kind of rooted in a really good understanding of lifetime value of their customers, and that their customers are not really guitar players; they're people who want to be guitar players. And that if you can get them from, I'm going to buy a guitar and figure out how to play it, and if you can get them into some base level of competence and community, then suddenly you've got a lifetime customer that's going to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on gear, amplifiers, pedals, whatever. But I thought the way they were using this digital product, and even thinking about the monetization of it, because it is like a subscription service, but it's not intended to be a profit generator. It's intended to be a lifetime user maker, which I thought was a really good example. So anyway, again, it's not my blog post, but if you look in the Pollinator, I do have a reference to that several months ago. So again, there are also some product mindset blog posts on the solutiondesign.com website. If you look in our insights section, one where I think I'd say your secret weapon is value, and that's actually about this topic that you guys actually asked about. What if you're a dutiful software developer and you want to start adopting product models? How can you, maybe make the shift away from a requirement towards something that you thought might be a better way of delivering that value? And the point of that post is focus on what the value is to the user, and back to the business. And even the person who made that requirement will probably be happy that you did so. But in general, pollinator.solutiondesign.com and our solutiondesign.com insights on product will include a lot of good thinking about product and the types of services that SDG can provide as well.
I'd like to just take a moment to congratulate Fender for achieving their mission. I have a Telecaster, American made, and a Fender amp, and I've played it very rarely.
Well, there you go.
And I am a bad guitar player. So well done.
Yeah, an American-made Telecaster is not cheap.
No, I had to save up.
Yeah.
Big jar pennies.
I think we're going to see come to product faster and faster. It just makes more sense in all aspects, not just sort of product, but digital product and even internal product and all of those things. It's a great mindset. I think if you start adopting it and seeing places to use it, it gets better.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, again, it's not just about having done that thing. It's about value for your customers and your business.
Pollinator.solutiondesign.com.
There we go.
Thought. Subscribe. And with that, I think we'll shut it down. Jason, thanks for joining us again. Peter, thanks for joining us every time. And with that, I think we'll say goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.